Moonstone Guinevere Miles, known as Ginny to people who didn't want to incur her fierce and everlasting wrath, heaved her suitcase off the luggage reclaim belt with an "oof" and placed it on the floor, a sigh of relief escaping her. At least the thing had wheels. She didn't really have the energy for carrying a heavy suitcase all the way through customs and out to arrivals. The long, tiring flight had seen to that. No matter how much she tried, no matter how exhausted she was, she simply could not fall asleep on a plane. Ever. Eye mask, earplugs, meditation, bloody whale music, nothing helped. She'd long since resigned herself to staying awake while snores from other passengers emanated around the cabin. At least it had only been about 7.5 hours since taking off from Heathrow. She couldn't imagine what state she'd be in if she ever flew any longer than that, to Australia, New Zealand or somewhere. Doubtful that would ever happen, though. It had taken long enough for her to get her backside out to the east coast of America, where her parents had been running a retreat since retiring 5 years ago. But then, things were different now, weren't they? Which was why she was even here in the first place. It wouldn't have been possible otherwise. Thinking of her parents brought an inevitable smile to her face and inserted a little more spring in her step. Despite the energy and mood suck that had been the flight, she was excited to be here. She was eager to see her parents and to find out exactly what they'd built up over the last 5 years. She'd seen photos and videos, but it wasn't the same as actually being there. When they'd first announced they were using their retirement nest egg to open a retreat in upstate New York, she'd been floored. Who the hell retires only to take on a massive project like that? Surely the whole point of retiring is to wind down, enjoy some free time, relax. But no. Her mum and dad, who, to be fair, had never been what one would call conventional, had set their hearts on it. They'd had a huge purge of their belongings, sold their cars and house, and jetted off across the pond, leaving Ginny shocked and not a little bereft. She'd been used to having them close by, and had quickly realised just how much she'd taken that for granted. At the same time, her career as a chef had taken off, and she'd become so busy that her parents' sudden distance hadn't made the blindest bit of difference. She barely saw the inside of her own flat, never mind her friends and family. This was the first Christmas she'd had off work since then too, and she was looking forward to spending it with her parents more than she could put into words. They'd been big on the festive period ever since she was a baby, and as such, Ginny's brain was stuffed full of warm, fuzzy memories of Christmases past. They'd been useful to get her through the last 5 crappy ones too, where a microwaved ready meal was the best she could hope for, if she hadn't managed to wangle a free meal from the place she'd been working at the time. Her smile widened, and she walked faster still. God, just how big is this bloody airport? Desperate to see her mum and dad and start the Christmas holiday with a bang. Anticipation rushed through her. They'd have turkey and roast potatoes, pigs in blankets, mounds of vegetables, desserts laden with enough calories to last them until Valentine's Day, Christmas carols, amazing decorations, a beautiful tree, fairy lights, and Santa Claus. 2 of them, in fact, jumping up and down enthusiastically and waving wildly at her, with not a rotund belly in sight. Ginny was so excited she couldn't even be bothered with the embarrassment she might have felt at being greeted in a public place by her parents dressed up in Santa outfits. Plus, nobody knew her here anyway, so who cared? She scurried around the barrier, almost flipping her case in her haste to turn a corner, then covered the remaining distance between them in seconds flat and released the handle of her suitcase. A series of squeals and exclamations went up, from all 3 of them, and then everything went dark as Ginny was enveloped in a warm, fluffy embrace. Her face crushed up against what she suspected was the white fur trim on her mother's jacket, and kisses rained down on her. It was all she could do to suck in oxygen as she was squeezed, and squeezed them right back. She was assailed by the scents of clean clothes, shampoo, perfume, and cologne, all perfectly lovely smells by themselves, but somewhat overwhelming all at once. Unintelligible murmurings reached her ears, but she didn't bother to reply, since she had no idea what was being said. And she didn't need words anyway. All she needed at that moment in time was to soak up the enormous outpouring of love she was experiencing. She was so bloody happy, she thought she might pop. Eventually, her parents loosened their hold enough so she could step back and actually look at them. She took in her father's handsome face, his steel grey hair, or what she could see beneath the hat at least, his wide grin, and her mother's long, light grey waist-length plaits, the glint in her eyes, and the glow of her skin. "Guys, you look fantastic. If this is what retirement does for you, I think I might sign up now." Her mother, Deborah, gave a nonchalant shrug, which, given her attire, was way more amusing than it should have been. "What can I say, sweetheart? I feel fantastic. I've got so much more energy than I ever had in London, even when I was much younger." She shrugged again. "It's the retreat, I'm sure of it. The moment your father and I first set foot there all those years ago, I felt there was something magical about it. Silver Springs is the most wonderful little town, and we're lucky enough to live and work in the most spectacular part of it, though it hardly feels like work." Ginny gave her mother a kiss on the cheek, then turned to her father, Charlie. "And you, Dad? You look 20 years younger, but how do you feel?" His face took on a beatific expression. "The same as your mother, kiddo. Exactly the same. If I'd known just how wonderful it would be, I'd have thrown in the towel and moved out here years ago. Decades even." He grabbed the handle of Ginny's case in one hand, then looped the other around her neck and pulled her in to drop a kiss on her chin-length blonde hair, which he then ruffled. "I'm so thrilled you're here, Moony. You're going to love it in Silver Springs. Just love it. Come on, let's get going. We've got a long drive ahead of us, and the weather's on the turn." Ginny bit back comments on both his use of her childhood nickname and his messing up of her hair. She didn't want to dampen the almost euphoric mood that seemed to float between the three of them, a combination of being pleased to see each other and her parents' obvious appreciation of their new home. Though 5 years was hardly new anymore, was it? She really should have visited before now, but the circumstances had been impossible. Now they weren't, and she was here, in the bosom of her family at Christmas time, and it was going to be magical. And at some point, she'd enlighten her parents about the fact she had nothing in particular to rush home for, either. But that could wait. No need to burst the happy, everything is perfect bubble just yet. She'd let them all enjoy their first Christmas together in years before broaching the subject. They made their way out of the airport building. The cold air slapped Ginny in the face, momentarily taking her breath. Her slight gasp drew her mother's keen eye. "I hope you listened to me, sweetheart, and brought warm clothes with you. It's even colder up in Silver Springs, you know." "The car's not far," her dad piped up. "I'll get the heating on as soon as we're inside, and we'll soon have you snug as a bug in a rug." He tipped her a wink, and warmth flooded her veins. She hadn't realised until now just how much she'd missed her wacky yet lovable parents. They might be unconventional, old hippies most would call them, but they'd given her a wonderful childhood. When she'd reached adulthood, they'd remained incredibly close, with them managing to achieve the perfect balance of loving and supportive without being controlling. They'd let her forge her own path, make her own mistakes, and had been there to help pick up the pieces without uttering so much as an "I told you so." They'd definitely earned this idyllic new life they'd carved out for themselves, and she couldn't wait to experience it for herself, if only for a little while. Though she wasn't sure how much fun there was to be had in the back end of Beyond. It was hardly going to be lively. Perhaps it was a good thing she was only here for an extended holiday. Her dad hadn't exaggerated. They reached the car within a couple of minutes, and Ginny was soon ensconced in the back seat, her seatbelt on and the heating blasting out. They had to wait a little while for the windscreen to clear, but were shortly on their way. Once they left the airport complex and hit the open road, the purring of the engine and the rumble of the tyres on the road surface gradually lulled Ginny into a light doze. She was vaguely aware of a squeak, presumably as her mother shifted in her seat, then a chuckle, followed by a murmured, "Bless her, she's dropped off already. She never could sleep on a plane, even as a child. Bet she's